I think it's very interesting if you look at, and let's just say for quarterbacks, let's say the top 10, because this is going to shock some people. Who do you think he has rated higher? Do you think that he has Quinn Ewers or Riley Leonard rated higher?
Well, if I had to guess, Quinn Ewers. I mean, that makes too much sense.
No, it's not Quinn Ewers. He has moved Riley Leonard ahead of Quinn Ewers, which is crazy to me. This is Mel Kyper's ranking of quarterbacks. Shedeur number 1 by a lot. Cam Ward, Jaxson Dart, Tyler Shook, Jalen Milroe, Kyle McCord, Will Howard. So you've got Kyle McCord in another bit of fate. You've got Kyle McCord ahead of Will Howard. Dylan Gabriel, Riley Leonard, Quinn Ewers 10. How much of this list do you agree with? If you were putting this together, how would you change it?
I mean, I agree with Shedeur at 1. I would have Dart at 2. I certainly would not have Shook at 4. I could tell you that.
So that's too high or too low?
I think that's too high. I think, Shook and Kyle McCord, I think should be further down this list. I think Will Howard should be at 4. I would have Quinn Ewers at 5. Dylan Gabriel. Dylan Gabriel's left-handed. Am I remembering that correctly?
Correct.
Right? Yeah, left-handed quarterback.
So he gets downgraded.
I'm going to knock him for that. Left-handed quarterback success is pretty rare. I mean, Tua is really the only guy.
Because you have to change your offensive line, and you have to change. Excuse my cough. You have to change the route combinations based on where they start.
Right. So
because he's left-handed.
Looking at this list, I agree with your assessment of Shedeur. I like a lot of people knock Shedeur for, being a little bit smaller of a guy, but I think he far makes up for that with the mentals, how he plays the game. So I have Shedeur 1. I would have Jaxson Dart number 2. Then I'd probably have Will Howard. Then I would probably have Quinn Ewers at that point. Then I'd probably have either, obviously Cam Ward's got to be there, but I think, I don't know. It's kind of a mix, like the Dylan Gabriel, Riley Leonard.
Why are you hemming and you weren't hemming and hawing on this in the pre-show meeting?
Well, I hadn't seen this list in the pre-show meeting. The question we talked about in the pre-show meeting was who I would take number 1. And
no, but you were absolutely knee padding Jaxson Dart in the pre-show meeting.
I mean,
knee padding.
Yeah, knee
padding.
I
would be Shedeur 1, Jaxson Dart 2. I would have Quinn Ewers number 3. I would have Cam 4. I would have Will Howard 5, Dylan Gabriel 6th, and then I don't care who else you put on top.
Yeah, see, I agree. I think Shedeur and Jaxson Dart are your top 2.
I think Jaxson Dart is the closest to Shidor Sanders. I'm again somebody who also, and I want to make this clear because I think I'm probably the idiot in the room for thinking this way. I draft quarterbacks and I pay quarterbacks to win Super Bowls.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Right? I think so. As I look at this list, Shedeur and Jaxson Dart are the 2 closest to winning a Super Bowl. And then I think it's Quinn Ewers. Then I think it's Cam.
Why do you feel like Quinn's ahead of Cam?
Because Quinn Ewers can throw the football. And the only thing that I worry about with Quinn Ewers is he likes to take big hits.
Yeah.
I don't like how
he's seen those injuries play out.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like if he had not missed a single college game, he would be far and away the 3rd best quarterback in this draft.
Okay. I think that's really fair.
And I think he might be number 2. Yeah. Because as far as forget the injuries, Quinn Ewers has every tool that you want. Yeah. There's no question that Quinn Ewers is built to play in the National Football League. But I think the injuries spooked me a little bit.
Yeah.
And I've seen enough QBs come out of NFL drafts. There are no QBs in this draft that are a home run. But how many home runs did we have? Nobody even knew who Tom Brady was, really.
Right.
Peyton Manning, home run. John Elway, home run. If we go back in time, Dan Marino, home run, didn't win a Super Bowl. So if we go back through time, and even in the modern era, nobody saw Patrick Mahomes this way.
Yeah, nobody saw him as the best QB in the league.
You didn't certainly believe that Patrick Mahomes was going to be the end-all, be-all.
Well, and nobody thought Aaron Rodgers would be the end all be all. I don't think anyone thought that
Alex Smith, Aaron Rodgers, remember that whole thing?
I don't think anyone saw that come in. I don't think
Joe Montana, certainly
Joe
not.
Montana, certainly not. I think you look around and I think that there are numerous examples of guys who, are downgraded, drafted, deep in the draft, low in the draft, second, third round guys who, people are taking flyers on in a sense. And it's the old saying, right? I mean, obviously, if you draft a guy in the second or third round, that guy understands that he's got to be motivated and has to make up ground.
Certainly.
I mean, that's the reality of the situation. So
certainly,
to me, the real question is like, how do you find that balance? Because the inevitable, could have told you this was going to happen 6 months ago storyline of Shedeur falling in the draft is now here and taking place. And everyone, his line in Vegas went from it over under being selected at 8 to over under being selected at 21.5, because obviously the Steelers are sitting there and there's of course all that smoke with them. So I sit here and I say, okay, when you talk about home runs in the draft with quarterbacks, when you talk about hitting a home run, we got to talk about expectations based on where we draft you.
Right. And
So,
I think in the modern, but is there a recent draft you can think of that was Elway, Jim Kelly, Dan Marino? What was that? 1985? Not that I can think of. Was there a 2004? Remember that draft with your boy, who you seemingly, I think, again, to use your term, knee pad, Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger, Eli Manning, and Phil Rivers. That was 2004. But other than that, like you look at 2005 with Aaron Rodgers and Alex Smith, is it Ryan Fitzpatrick, Matt Castle, Kyle Orr? Those aren't great quarterback classes. I don't know, and I could be wrong. I don't believe in the last decade, and it might be 20 years. I don't know that we've had a great quarterback class. And I think it's because the quarterback game and the way that the position is played has changed so much. We're throwing the ball down the boundary constantly now.
Mm-hmm.
We're not handing it off. We're not pitching it as much. The counter run has been replaced by a zone running scheme. The gap scheme is dead. Right? So the way that we go about playing the position, and remember, we went from pure pocket passer, I can't throw, I'm going to run, hybrid, I can throw and I can run. And I think now we're starting to move back to, hey, you better be able to throw the football to win in this league.
Yeah.
And I think maybe, Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis scares some people. RG3, certainly, as we've talked about all month on this show with his plethora of injuries.
Yep.
I think that's the thing. And so I look at the younger QBs in this league. I don't know. Do you all consider Patrick Mahomes still to be young? Probably not. He's in his prime.
Well, I think he's in his prime, but he's definitely a younger QB. He's not in his 30s. I think he's not this, we're not talking about Pat, playing, 5 more years. He's still got probably 10 years in the league at least. I mean, he's still got a long time. So, I mean, I when you say a young
29,
guy,
he's 29. You're right.
I mean, when you say a young guy, that would mean like, oh, he's like 24. Well, yeah, I mean, he's still young, but he's not inexperienced. He's a veteran. And I think, that's the right way to say it. He's in his prime.
He's just come into his prime, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, when I look at these quarterbacks, man, what I want as an organization is I want to evaluate my ability to move up in the draft, because in this particular draft, there is all kinds of noise and communication happening about people wanting to trade out of their spots, right? This is not like other drafts where it's been very quiet and the first 10 picks are basically on autopilot.
Right.
Yeah. So this draft to me is an opportunity, and this is what I'm going to be watching for tomorrow. What playoff team tomorrow is going to trade up in the draft and sacrifice some of their future to get their next QB in the pipeline? Because I think that's been a conversation happening in the league over the last 3-4 seasons.
Yeah.
And the Aaron Rodgers saga is not helping this, but it's pushing it forward. Hey, we don't have a QB. We're the New York Giants. We're the Steelers. We're this, we're that. We don't have a QB. At what point do we draft QB? Or at what point do we sign a guy and then draft and have him sit behind? That's what I feel like is going to define the first 10 picks in this draft. Who moves up and who wants to go about it that way?
Okay, if you are, let's play the game. Get in the comments section. You are the Tennessee Titans. Who are you drafting? Because I think this is a really fascinating question. And I think it's one of those things where you have to ask yourself, if you're the Titans, what's the right move? And I think there's only one right move, and that is not to draft anybody, trade that pick. If you can get multiple picks in the top 10, and maybe it's top 15, I'm open to that. I think you've still got to get a quarterback.
Right.
I think you still have to get much better defensively, though. I mean,
there's a lot you need. That's the reality of the situation. And I think, again, as I keep saying, it's philosophical, and that's why this conversation is so great. Like, for me, philosophically speaking, in today's modern NFL, I think your team begins and ends with whether you have franchise quarterback or not. Like, you can have a great defense, you can have great skill positions, but if you don't have a quarterback to lead the team forward and to be that rock on that side of the ball, you typically are not going to go to the playoffs, or you're going to have a tough time getting to the playoffs. You're definitely not a Super Bowl contender. So to me, I look at it and I say, okay, if I'm the Titans, yeah, I think you're right. There's a lot of credence to looking at what could we get by trading out. Of course, you have the number 1 overall pick. You could leverage a team into giving you multiple picks for that pick, depending on their situation. So I think that's always an option you have to look at. But if it was me, I would go ahead and draft a quarterback, and I would take Shedeur. I would take Shedeur number 1 overall. I would put the quarterback position to bed for my organization. And then from there, and I don't know off the top of my head what else the Titans in this case have through the rest of the draft, but from there, then I would probably look at trying to trade back up into the draft, maybe, or what other
the
options
Titans have the number 1 pick. They have the 3rd pick in the 2nd round, the 1st pick in the 4th, the 18th in the 4th, and then you're 2 in the 5th, 2 in the 6th.
So you have a lot of picks in this draft.
You do, excuse me. You do, but you don't have multiples in the 1st or 2nd round. And I think if obviously I think the Raiders and Saints, the Giants.
Yeah.
If you're able to flip the Giants and you can say to yourself, okay, you give me your 3rd pick plus your 2nd pick at number 2 in the 2nd round.
Yeah.
I'll give you the number 1 overall pick. And I'll throw you a 5th rounder.
So you wouldn't be looking for a player in that deal.
No, I want multiple picks because you're really crappy.
Yeah.
Tennessee's not good.
Yeah.
And so my point is, if you're Tennessee and you can get, again, the Giants, because they're at the top of the 2nd round as well. But the Raiders wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. If you can get the Raiders to give you the 6th pick and the 5th pick of the 2nd round for your number 1 overall, are you really saying no to that? Because if you get the 6th, you're probably getting Jaxson Dart.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have a shot at Shedeur, right? And then you have a really good depth of defensive talent available to you with multiple picks at the top of the 2nd round.
Yeah.
And
certainly.
That's why if I look at Tennessee, if Tennessee, and let's say it's the Raiders, right?
All right.
Tennessee would have the 6th pick, the 2nd pick of the 3rd pick of the 2nd round, and the 5th pick of the 2nd round.
Yeah.
You just turned 1 player into 3 players.
Inside what, the top 40
inside
picks
inside the top 35 picks.
Yeah.
That to me makes a hell of a lot of sense.
It makes a lot of sense. See, and this is what I mean. Like, I completely agree. I agree that makes a ton of sense. And you're a bad team that needs to add as much talent as you can. So if you can do that while also maybe, and again, in that scenario, obviously it wouldn't be, Shedeur at that point, because the Raiders would be trading up to get him, let's say, or whatever. Yep. But like, if you can do that and one of those extra picks that you pick up, you can then turn into a QB, then great. That's awesome. I'm totally down with that plan. But what you can't do if you're a team like the Titans, and again, we've talked about this every year in the draft. If you're that team drafted number 1 overall, you're really bad. Like,
yeah,
you are awful.
God, and they are, right? I think we
terrible.
all agree. Like, Tennessee's not good.
So if you're in that position, you need to get to a place where where, yes, you add talent, but I'm telling you, if you can reliably end the question of who's playing quarterback for us, and then you can move on to, all right, let's add one receiver and then work on the defense this year. Or like if you look at the Bears, hey, we're going to draft Caleb. We're gonna add we're gonna give him some people to throw to, some players to throw to, but we're gonna take a hit on the offensive line.
Yeah.
But then next year in this year's draft, we're gonna work on okay, great. I'm perfectly down with that plan. Now, Caleb got his ass beat. He still had a great season. Like, your boy paid the price, but you're working the plan. So my biggest thing in the draft, generally speaking, and for a team like the Titans, would be understand the vision. It's the old saying of, you got to know where you are and where you're going, right? And you got to know where you're coming from. You're coming from one of the worst seasons in franchise history. You're one of the worst teams in the NFL. And you got to know what your route is. What is the build of this football team going to be? And I do agree with everyone saying that modern NFL, kind of what you were alluding to, is like, hey, you got to be able to throw it down the boundary. You got to be able to complete passes at 68% plus, at kind of a minimum. Yep. That's kind of the new bar. And then from there, the world's kind of your oyster as far as, do you want to be, defensive minded? Do you want to put more money on the offense? Like, that's the trouble. So the other thing with the draft out or trade out of the number one pick thing that concerns me is seemingly every year there's a team that trades down and messes it up, right? There's a team that trades out of their spot
or misses on quarterback.
I
mean, and right now, I think the guy that's under a lot of pressure right now is J.J. McCarthy in Minnesota, because I think last year's draft was actually, if you look at the draft from last year, and I don't want to make any outlandish statements, regrade the draft. Caleb Williams, certainly a franchise quarterback in Chicago.
Yep.
Jaden Daniels.
Certainly.
Right? They both have identical numbers. Drake May in New England.
Yeah, I think he's a franchise guy. Yeah. Not as good of a situation as those two.
But he's got to prove it now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Marvin Harrison with Arizona.
Bust.
You think he's a bust?
Oh, yeah. I think he's a bust. Yeah. I think that I think that he had so much hype around him. Like, he's solid, but I don't think that he's Hall of Famer, generational talent. Like
8 touchdowns, 885 yards on 62 receptions. Maybe not fourth in the draft numbers.
Yeah. But again, in Arizona. So
Joe Alt with the Chargers, stud.
Stud.
Malik Neighbors, stud. J.C. Latham, Tennessee, stud.
Yeah.
Big Penix Energy in Atlanta.
Unknown.
But that quarterback position's a mess. Right, so you start, even if you just look, Roma Dunze, I think ninth. You need
great
more
value
from him. Really?
I think he's great value. I think it's his first year in the offense. I think it's their first year playing together. I mean, I agree that 54
he was a work in catches. I mean, well, you know what? I look at it and you're not wrong. 54 catches, 734 yards, but only 3 touchdowns. And I think a lot of that was that offensive.
What did you
line.
say Marvin Harrison had? 800. So, I mean, that's really not that.
Yeah. But if we start looking at quarterback, J.J. McCarthy never gave you anything in Minnesota. That's scary. Bo Nix is, I don't know, is Bo Nix a stud?
Yeah. Stud.
Okay.
Yep.
Bo Nix is a stud. Those quarterbacks is Shedeur Sanders better than any of those quarterbacks? I think he's clearly better than J.J. McCarthy. I don't think there's any doubt about that. At least what we've seen out of J.J. so far.
I think at a minimum, he's as good as Bo Nix. As good, if not better.
Michael Penix.
Don't know. He didn't play.
Drake May.
Better than Drake May.
Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams.
That's where I think we have questions. I can't definitively say he's better than those guys.
We'll see. Because
I think, and this is the hill you've been dying on with Caleb Williams, right? Like Jaden Daniels had such a better situation to work with, and he looked amazing. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But, Caleb Williams made the best of, by pretty much everyone's standard, a mediocre situation that he had to work with. And so, if you ask me, hey, well, what is Shedor's rookie season going to look like? Well, I'm inclined to say he's going to have probably 3,500 yards, as kind of a baseline. And it really depends on where he goes. Now, again, and again, huge caveat here, right? If he goes to Pittsburgh, we're not going to know. Unless Aaron gets hurt, right? I'm just assuming Rodgers is going to play there.
Did you guys see Mel Kiper's mock Peter Schrager's mock at ESPN has Pittsburgh at 21 taking Shidor Sanders?
Yeah, a lot of people think he's going to fall to them.
Last year, Jaden Daniels, was 12-5, won 2 playoff games, completed 69% of his passes, 3,568 yards, 25 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. So 3,568, 25 touchdowns, 9 interceptions.
Yeah.
The bust known as Caleb Williams, 3,541 yards, 20 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Sacked 68 times. I thought you said he was sacked 68 times. They have
Rough.
identical numbers.
Yeah, it's really rough.
And Caleb was sacked 68 times.
So that's my point. Like when we talk about what should the Titans do, or what would you do if you were the Titans?
I'd turn 1 pick into 3.
And I think I'd draft a quarterback. I would.
And Shedeur, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I would go Shedeur. Yeah.
Okay.
And if they're not a fan of Shedeur, then I would go Jaxson Dart.
Delaric says Harrison is a bust for the position he went. He played more like a pick 22, 32 spot. I would agree with that. T. Lawrence. What's up, T. Lawrence? First pick, I'm taking Cam Ward. You're a Cam Ward guy.
Yeah, see, and I think that's the other portion of this draft, dude. I think that the optics around like what you're willing to put up with these guys. So like
yes.
Cam Ward's a bigger quarterback that theoretically should stay healthier in the league, but is going to take more risk in terms of how he throws the football.
And
right?
can afford to.
And can afford to. Right. So I wouldn't take Cam only because I would prefer with my quarterback that I'm taking in the top 5, if that's where I'm going to draft, I would prefer to get a guy who has shown me at the college level that mentally he knows what the defense is doing. He knows where the ball should go given the scheme, because I'm a massive believer in that. I'm a massive believer in, hey, I'm standing under center in the gun. I'm looking at the defense. I know what their scheme is. I know what our scheme is. What's the correct answer, right? Like multiple choice test. Hey, where should the ball go here? And I'm an even bigger fan, obviously, and this is what I think the elite quarterbacks do in college, of, hey, I know the defense scheme. I know my scheme. I know currently where the ball should go, but I also know where the weak point of the defense is if I audible. And if you see those type of behaviors in college, that's the guy I want, even if he's smaller. And for those reasons alone, that's why I like Shedeur, because I think you can take that ability. You can really stretch that ability in the league. And if you just simply protect him and he's not an idiot running around and putting his body on the line, then he's going to be just fine. And for me, that's why I would take Shedeur over Cam, even though Cam's got the physical attributes that any organization would want in a quarterback.
Yeah, I'm just going back and looking at some of the number 1 overall picks in the draft recently. Trevor Lawrence. Is Trevor Lawrence a bust?
Who?
5 head.
Thank you.
God's quarterback. Is
God's quarterback.
Well, Dabo says that program was built on name, image, and Jesus' name, image, and likeness.
God's name, image, and likeness.
I think he's close.
Program.
63% completions on 2,000 attempts. And you're 69 and 46 touchdown a pick.
I think, just in fairness to Buddy, though, there is been a lot of turnover.
Only played 10 games last year.
Only played 10 games.
Zach
due
Wilson.
To Azeez Al-Shaair. Zach Wilson, yeah, what was he? Number 1 overall?
Number 2.
Number 2 overall?
Trey Lance.
No, that's a bust. Yeah, Trey Lance is a bust.
Have you guys want to talk about busts? Here's the 2021 top 10. Trevor Lawrence, bust. Zach Wilson, bust. Trey Lance, bust. Kyle Pitts, bust. Jamar Chase, bust.
Chase isn't.
I'm kidding. Stud. Jalen Waddle, stud. Penei Sewell, stud. J.C. Horn, good. Patrick Surtain, good. Devontae Smith,
stud.
Justin Fields, bust. That's the top 11. That is the top 11. See,
that's what I mean, dude.
That is ugly. And if we go, if you even go, like, look at, does anybody remember who the number 1 pick in 2023 was?
No.
Probably the best number 1 pick of the last 5 years. Or excuse me, no, 2022. 2022, because 2023 was the Bryce Young year. Let's be careful. We're not doing Bryce Young. CJ Stroud.
Stud.
You think he's a stud?
Oh, yeah.
He was
Stud.
number 2 in that draft.
Stud. Yeah.
If you look at the 2022 NFL draft, it's Trayvon Walker. That's a stud.
Yeah.
That guy's 21 sacks, 24 sacks total career. Stud. Aiden Hutchinson, stud. Darryl Stingley, stud. Sauce Gardner, stud. Kayvon Thibodeau, stud. Like, you want to talk about studs everywhere. I mean, Kyle Hamilton.
But look how light the quarterbacks are in that draft.
Well,
like it's all.
Well, yeah. I mean, who's the highest pick quarterback that year? Kenny Pickett, bust. That's a bad quarterback.
Where did they
draft.
pick him at? What?
The Steelers picked him 20th in the first round. Jesus. I mean, you look at that top 5.
That's rough.
Trayvon, Aiden Hutchinson, Darryl Stingley, Sauce Gardner, and Kayvon Thibodeau. Studs.
Yeah, dude.
Not quarterbacks. So I throw that out there to say, maybe you're right. First pick, I'm taking Cam. Okay.
But like,
maybe.
how much value? How much value do you put on having a franchise quarterback? Risk versus reward, because you're not like looking at these drafts. Like, yeah, Cam Ward should hit. I would be a little surprised if he was a bust.
But wouldn't you rather? That's interesting.
You know what I mean? Like,
wouldn't you rather buy a quarterback than draft a quarterback?
I mean, probably, yeah.
But how many Joe Burrows are ever on the market? How many? That's the problem.
You're pigeonholed into Joe Flacco, not Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I don't know. I think if I look at 2022, that's obviously the outlier, right? Where the top rated quarterback was 20th, or first selected quarterback was 20th. But I mean, you go back to that 2021 draft, and I mean, I think either your best player is probably Jamar Chase in that draft.
Yeah.
Right now, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, all 3 of them bust. Kyle Pitts a bust.
Yeah, Jamar Chase is
Kyle, and we shouldn't say Kyle Pitts is a bust. He wasn't the generational game-changing tight end everybody thought he would be. Not a bust. I don't want to overstate that. Jamar Chase is one of the best receivers in the modern era.
Yeah.
Right? So Jalen Waddle, Penei Sewell's a very good player. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this works out. Ferris, you're back, Ferris. What did you say to get filtered? In this draft, I would wait and pick up Ewers later in the draft. Could be. Sean Mierzinski, hello, my friend. First pick should be Cam Ward. Will be. I don't think it should be. I would take Shedeur over Cam Ward. No, I almost have no doubt about that. That's just me. Mike Smith, Mountain Mama. Harrison would be much better on a better team, probably. But how long are Arizona Cardinals going to say they're not a good team? I mean, you have legitimate talent there.
Because it's garbage.
But what are you missing, in my opinion? A quarterback who can see over the offensive line and is allowed to drive legally. Okay, that probably is.
Got him.
Probably too much. Mike Smith, 2020, Joe Burrow, Herbert, Tua, and Love. I love Justin Herbert. That's a situational problem. Tua Tagovailoa it just can't stay healthy.
Yeah.
And Jordan Love's not a franchise quarterback.
Well, ask Green Bay what they think about that.
Well, they paid him, but what choice did you have?
Yeah.
I think Joe Burrow's the only cemented guy there. I want to see Justin Herbert outside of the LA Chargers ecosystem.
Yeah.
I want to see him outside of that and see what that looks like.
Don't know if you ever will, though.
Big Papa War Machine. Cam Ward is a trap, I feel like. Not like next draft is looking any better, though. I'm going Shedeur. There's not a great quarterback. I don't know. Is Arch going to be a great NFL quarterback? I don't know. It might be nice to see him in college. And he's number 2 in the Heisman odds right now. Let the guy start for a season first, right? Stepanek says Tennessee should take Sanders. Delaric says Titans trade, if not, take Ward because I believe he has higher upside than Shedeur. But right now, Shedeur is going to be better now. I don't disagree. That could absolutely be.
Yeah.
That could absolutely be that Cam Ward's upside is higher. But when has Tennessee developed a quarterback?
Great question.
Because Will Levis had hype. Marcus Mariota, bust.
Yep.
Like, when's the last time they drafted Ryan Tannehill? What was Ryan Tannehill?
Get me over.
But he wasn't a bad quarterback, right?
No, he just wasn't great. He was a get me over. He was an average,
And they didn't draft him.
Like, he didn't lose you games, but he also didn't win you games.
Yeah. Yeah. Stepanik says, I wonder if Kansas City will get a good draft pick from the Buffalo Bills again. Well, I think, did you guys hear what Patrick Mahomes said today? That they're ready to unleash the passing game. Because obviously Brown and Rice were hurt last year.
Mm-hmm.
Xavier Worthy, I think he emerged, right? He by the end of the year, he was actually a solid route runner. But is Andy Reid going to throw the ball all over the field? That'll be interesting. That will be interesting to see. Damon Bolden, 1983 NFL draft is notable for having 6 quarterbacks selected in the first round. Elway, Blackledge, Kelly, Tony Eason, Ken O'Brien, and Dan Marino. Wild. How many quarterback trophies are there? More lost than one. Monty's draft plan, the synopsis of the movie Draft Day. Turning 1 pick into 3 impactful players. Yeah, could be. Nobody's trading for this year's number 1 pick. Too much to give up for too little return. Always depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
There's a sucker born every day, right? Truly. Jaron Eccles, to his defense, Marvin Harrison has a toddler throwing him the ball. Listen.
Dude, he works out with linebackers. I mean, give the guy some credit, dude.
Listen, and come on, you guys, to talk about Kyler Murray like that, I think you guys take for granted how hard he works.
Pick it up.
Like, look at him lifting weights. Is it nice of you guys to come in here and insult him and make fun of his size? Look at how hard he's working here in the weight room.
Yeah, I mean, not everyone is as physically gifted as Shannon. Like, we all got to lift some weights and do some things.
It's way too early to be making Shannon Sharp jokes.
What?
And listen, you can see right there that Kyler's choking. So it's one of...
Do you even lift? All right, bro. Have a nice day. Didn't mean nothing by it.
We're making fun of Kyler and chastising Jaron for it. It's not his fault his legs never grew. Okay. Jerry's not trading up in this draft. He'll stay put or trade down, not up. That's interesting. That's interesting because I think the Cowboys are one of those. Oh, yeah. Mike Smith. 1989 draft, 4 out of the first 5 picks are Hall of Famers. Absolutely. TJ Beck. Herbert will end up like Fouts. Very similar trajectory. Sadly, no Super Bowl wins. Got to be the system at the Chargers. I'm telling you. And you have a guy with all the talent in the world. And I think you're going to waste him.
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion. I think you're going to waste him. I don't know how long he'll be healthy because that dude takes absolute beatings.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a legitimate thing that he takes a beating. And I'll be very curious to see how he ends up.